Well, thanks for coming. Apparently, I did not offend too many people, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And I would like to say that this is my first Australia trip. This is a very nice country. I didn't know that I'd also be looking for a second home, or maybe my new home, depending on how the election turns out. It's closer than I want it to be. And I mentioned this in Sydney yesterday, and they highly encouraged me to live in Sydney. But is Melbourne not an okay town too? Oh yeah? It's better? Oh, Perth. Look, I just want to get away. I don't care where. So anyway, hopefully, well, even if Hillary wins, maybe I'll move here anyway because it is a beautiful place. So I've loved everybody that I've met here as well. Anyway, I thought I'd cover this topic. I think in the theme of being a strategic CFO, you really have to bridge the gap between strategy and execution. You have to be very execution oriented. And I'll say, what qualifies me to even be here and speak to you about this? And maybe two things might give me some credibility. One is I've been attracted to companies that as a business model focus on this. So SuccessFactors really did come up with the tagline business execution software, where we tried to link goals with performance, with compensation, with learning, so that everybody was aligned behind what the company really wanted to do. So I learned a lot there, and then DOMO is just SuccessFactors Part 2, because our vision was, why not provide all the data to track how you're doing real time, live real time, on your phone, anywhere, to everyone. So as businesses, I've really been thinking about this, or the businesses I've joined have really made this a core mission. And at the same time, I was 6 years at SuccessFactors. I got there when they were $80 million market cap. 6 years later, we exited for $3.4 billion, and it was all execution oriented. So I was in the trenches for 6 years, and I worked like a dog. But we were all about executing the business plan. And our CEO today would really say, I think, if you ask what made SuccessFactors successful, it wasn't the product, wasn't the technology, wasn't the channel, wasn't anything. It was just speed of execution. So between the two, between the companies I've been with and just that role that I had to play, I thought I'd just share thoughts on what I really think it takes to bridge the gap between strategy and execution. So let me begin. Oh, we should start. Why am I here today? Why would I come here and spend my time talking about this? I'm not getting paid. Do I just like to talk? No, actually, I'm not a talker. I just don't talk. My wife says, you don't talk enough. I think you knew that 30 years ago. But I'm here because we do have to become more strategic as CFOs. And if I can give you some ideas that help make you do that, I should. Because if you become more strategic, and this is really selfish when I think the way I'm going to say this. If you become more strategic, you'll be worth more to your company. If you're worth more to your company, you'll get paid more. If you get paid more, when my compensation committee looks at my pay, you will have raised the bar, and I will get paid more. So selfishly, I'm here to get paid more. And I'm very honest, actually, right? So that's why I'm here today. So, before we talk about execution, I can't help but talk about strategy. It's important. So, is this true? Some people think execution is the strategy. Just do a lot of things right, and all good things will happen. Do things. Get more done, more results will come. People believe this. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable, actually. I believe this too, at one point. But I've definitely evolved over time on this, and I'll give you some real scars to show you why I don't think that's true. What I think is true is this statement right here. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, but at least you can get to victory. It's slow if you don't have execution capability associated with your strategy. But if you just do things, execute, and don't have a strategy, you can end up in a very bad place. You'll likely end up in a bad place. And I live this. So I was with a company called Qualix Group, was a reseller of other vendor software products. And we realized as a reseller, where we didn't have control of the product and the product direction and the vision or the technology, where we were hostage to the vendor, there was no way we could be worth what we wanted to be worth. So we could have executed all we wanted, and it just wasn't going to work out for us. So what did we do? We switched to a publishing model where we sponsored the development of software companies, of developers, and we had exclusive rights to sell it. So we got more control over the technology. And we realized that wasn't enough either. So we could have executed all day long and perfectly on that one, and we wouldn't have gotten the value that we really wanted to out of it. We ultimately developed our own product to replace the product we were reselling, bought a company, and owned it and controlled it. And then from that point on, we were able to go public, very successful public offering. And then we sold to Legato a couple years later. Worked out perfectly. So again, all the execution behind the wrong strategies just was going to end up like this. And likewise, in 1999, I joined a company that had 20 million of revenue, 80 million of market cap. The dot-com wave came through. We turned off revenue, made it zero, turned that revenue into a PowerPoint presentation about how we're going to take the software, turn it on the outside, and make it a marketplace for CFOs to transact interest rate swaps and caps and floors and things like that. Revenue went to zero. Our market cap went from 80 million to 400 million. We raised 200 million and went to town. And we all realized at the end of the day, the customers weren't coming. That was called the dot-com blow-up. Luckily, we pivoted out of that right in the nick of time. But we executed flawlessly in that pursuit, and it did not matter. So again, you have to have the right strategy. And I bring it up because as you're executing the strategy, when things go wrong on the execution side, you have to rethink what might be going on strategically so you can make a correction. So you have to have that constant feedback to make sure you're on course. Otherwise, you'll end up in a place you don't want to be. Does that make sense? I lived it. It certainly makes sense to me. So once you have your strategy, how hard is it to execute? I'll give you the quick answer. Hard. Most companies do not get the value they should out of their strategy. It's just hard to execute. There are too many things to do. Too many things can go wrong. So what I've done just to help us all out here is list all the things that can go wrong. I won't even say can go wrong. All the things that do go wrong unless you proactively address them. So it's somewhat of a laundry list, but I don't know any other way to get through that. And I mean, you can kind of use it as a checklist. Am I doing this? Am I doing that? Am I doing this? So why is that the case? So 8 top reasons why execution does not happen unless you really put your mind to it, and why you lose 40 to 60% of the value you should get from your strategy. First, I'll bet we just don't articulate our strategy and goals very well. I'll bet if you went back to your management teams and you just sat at the same round table with 5 or 10 members and you said, everybody write down the strategy and the goals, I think you'd get 10 different answers, 5 or 10 different answers. I was just at a Texas Pacific Group conference where they have operating partners, and they say the one thing that they can really make a difference on is just please take 1 or 2 pages and please write down your strategy and your goals. Just write it down. There's all kinds of different formats to do that. If you do that, you'll kind of at least get a clear articulation of it and be able to debate whether it's clear or not, and whether you're all aligned or not aligned. Most companies we fail right here. And I'm part of the problem. I've done this many times. You have goals like we want to increase market share. We want we want top line to get better. We want bottom line to get better. We want customer satisfaction to improve. And this is what I learned from the PhDs at Success Factors. You have to have a goal, but you better have an outcome metric that best represents it. And you have to be very careful about that outcome metric. You need it to be precise, and you need it to have something to target. You need something to be able to report on. You need something to be able to follow. You need a benchmark for success. But you got to pick the right metric. But the main thing is at least have a metric for each one so you put a stake in the ground. But be very careful what that metric is and make sure it best represents the important objective that you have strategically set. This is rarely ever done. I mean, this is what we try to do at Success Factors as a product. Once you set the goals and have the metrics, how often do you push it all the way down the organization in a way that's meaningful? So for example, at Success Factors, cash flow from operations was our profit number. We did not have GAAP profits. We did not have EBITDA. It was as negative as you can get. We went public at 109%, minus 109% operating margins, minus 109%. So we had the big profit metric was cash flow from operations as an example. Would that have really done any good if I pushed that down to my organization, my finance org, and said, cash flow from operations is our goal. You guys all in or what? They wouldn't know what I was talking about. Some would, but most wouldn't. So you have to break it apart, and I pushed down to the accounts receivable group, DSO and aging targets. The transaction group, billing terms. Do it up, payment up front. Don't give monthly terms, for example. On the payable side, deals with vendors that elongate the payments. That's how you take a goal, break it apart, and push it down. And almost none of us do that really consistently through the whole organization. Most of the time, we don't even attempt to do it. And part of the reason why, I'll get to part of the reason why that's the case in a second. And then once you do it, do you really have systems to really capture how you're doing? That's very hard to do. If you break all the metrics down, it's an impossible task to get it in people's hands at a time frame that really works, as granular as you really want it to. But if you want to bridge the gap between strategy and execution, you kind of need to do it. Decisions are slow or not turned into action. So you get all the reports on how you're doing and things are off. Why don't we act quick enough? Because it takes time. We call meetings. We have dialogues. This is particularly true when it's cross-departmental. Let's just say we aren't renewing customers in a software company, or we aren't getting the same-day sales that we should out of a retail store, or we aren't getting what we should out of another customer. That could be due to many reasons, right? It could be product. It could be sales tactics. It could be our support organization. It could be anything. So trying to just mobilize many different departments to focus on the right things, very hard to do. So even when things are off, we just don't turn it into action quick enough. Then when something big happens, we definitely don't make a course correction fast enough, kind of for the same reason. What if a competitor makes a monster move on you? But what happens if Trump gets elected? What happens if an M&A opportunity presents itself? These are big things that could happen. What happens if a big regulatory rule comes flying at you? Unforeseen litigation, all kinds of stuff. So we tend to not make course corrections on the big items quickly enough. And then we don't tie compensation to performance very well. Now, I learned this firsthand at Success Factors also. So we were a public company, and as private, we were actually pretty good at compensation. At public, you get these compensation committees and a bunch of conservative guys, and they just want you to hit your revenue number and your profit number, and it kind of got dummied down. And I think us that are in public companies kind of realized the whole compensation system is all dummied down to two numbers that has nothing to do with what most of the people in the company do. So that's a problem. And lastly, we really don't allocate resources. I mean, this is on us. We really don't allocate resources strategically. We deal with what happened last year and what's to change this year. We pay attention to the person that cries the most, not the person that has the best idea. We just don't do this very well. But we need to if we want to really get the biggest bang for the buck. So, what can we do about it? So, I mean, that's a pretty long list. Is it even solvable? And I propose it is. And I propose this room can do a lot about this. I think we can fix this with technology and process, which I call, we can set everything up right to make that not happen, to address each one of those. And I call that, we can lead the horse to water, because if we do it right, the company will realize the value in what can be accomplished if this is done correctly. And so I say, you lead the horse to water, and most of the time, the company will go along with it. Not always. I was talking to a company the other day, and a CFO said, look, I really need to get data-driven and really understand what's going on. I said, we got the right solution for you. And he said, well, it won't really matter because the 3 brothers that run the business don't really care. So in that case, it really wouldn't matter. But most of the time, it's logic. It's logic that will prevail. And if you really show them the path, you can lead the horse to water, and it will probably drink. And we're in a good position to do this because we're CFOs. I mean, we have access to data. We're process people. So what are we supposed to do? Right? They'd expect it from us. Right? So I'm going to go through a case study on how I do this, just so you see it's possible. It's a set of technologies I use. You can use other ones. You don't have to use these. So it's the case study that matters, not really exactly how I do it, but you'll get the idea. So first thing, I just map what process or technology can deal with each of these 8 things. So we can have a goal capture and reporting analytics system to deal with the first 4. A collaboration system can help us with the next 2. A performance management system can help us with the 3rd. And then, of course, the budgeting system helps us with the 4th. And let me just walk through how I've literally done it to try to bridge the gap as much as possible where I am right now. So, goal capture, reporting, and analytics system. This is off my goal sheet. I have a top-line target. I have pipeline coverage target. I have a sales efficiency target. I want to get renewal rates to a certain amount, conversion rates. These are all key targets for the company. So I write them down. I grade them out, but those are real numbers. Clear goals represented by outcome metrics. Then what we want to do is I want to cascade them down to the organization. So I have 15 people on this, and underneath that, I push it down more granular. So I need to invite others to this. It doesn't do me any good to just have it for myself. I have to invite others to it. That's why you see the pictures up there. You have them tie their goals to the company goals in the way that makes sense for them. Not exactly like this, in the way that makes sense for them, just like that cash flow objective. DSOs are just a component of that, not cash flow all by itself. And make sure it just keeps getting pushed down to as far as it will go. And it can be on the manufacturing floor, it can be the retail person on the store floor, it can be, anybody, it can be the bank teller, it can be all the way down. Then, capture and communicate performance. So I'll pick on this one. This is, we call it, in SaaS, there's this thing called magic number. Can you get to 1? That means, can I spend sales and marketing dollars of 1 today and get 1 in new business tomorrow, like next quarter? That's why SaaS companies are so unprofitable. If you're spending sales and marketing $1 to get $1, how can you make money? And the answer is you can't make money from the traditional view of business. But if I could do that, I have a very valuable SaaS company. So I line it up like this. I make sure I track history on the left. The green is history. The blue is forecast. The line is where the target is. So I'm definitely under target. But I'm working on a path to get there. And so I make sure I have all the data it takes. And over here I have benchmarks too. So I am explaining to people, why is it 1? Because our benchmarks say it should be 1. So I use this to track performance and to communicate to people why the number is what it is, as opposed to just a number that they don't understand. So I want them to know where the number comes from. So the best practice here is always have your goal on it, have your benchmarks, have actual results, trended if possible. That's the most helpful. And get feedback on this and react to it as quickly as possible, which gets me pretty much to the next point. Communicate, have some kind of way to collaborate quickly without having to have meetings or send emails on the results that you experience. So we're in a world where there's a lot of collaboration technologies out there that you can use that tie into your analytic framework or your measurement and reporting system that let you take action right away as soon as you know something's not right. So you want to message, collaborate, learn, decide, and take the corrective action. And you want to do it now when you've got the information, not wait for a meeting. You want it on your phone. I'm pretty sure 100% of you here are not in your office right now. That's American humor, you know. We got to have it mobile. It's got to be on your phone. You just can't wait. You can't even wait to read an email, really. I mean, it really ought to be right there. Exactly what went wrong and what you, and even suggest what you should do about it. It's a digital age, so shouldn't we do this digitally? I think so. Just have the data show up on your phone so you know what's going on. That is a picture of my phone, by the way. That's real. Pay for performance. So I love this one. We actually have real-time information presented to the head of services on what it takes for him to get his or her bonus. And it's live data. And I can literally have a live calculation of their bonus, live. We lose a customer, it goes down. We retain a customer, it goes up. Very powerful. And not only is this powerful from a motivation standpoint when you see every day how you're doing, is you're able to course correct so much quickly when you're this live, real time, and able to adapt. Because I could close out this bonus and start a new one just because we're totally up to date if I think we need to make a change in direction. Otherwise, it's just too hard. I just can't imagine. Then otherwise, you'll be in the case, I can't imagine changing my comp system mid-quarter or maybe even mid-year. It's just too painful. Well, if you get real time like this, you can actually. You can turn the knobs really quickly. And then track how your spending is paying off. Is it paying off or is it not paying off? Are you getting strategic bang for the buck or not? So this gets to really budgeting. Align the spending with real high impact, not on who complains the most or says they've always had this money to spend. I just don't think that's the way the world works. If you're able to allocate money quickly to other projects, you will perform better and you will be much more nimble than your competitor, for sure. Because they can't do this. So if you can definitely get a competitive advantage. So, again, we're perfectly positioned to do this. We have access to data. I've yet to find a piece of data in our company where I could not say, does that not have a financial implication? They say yes. I go, then I'm involved. Right? There's every piece of data you can tie it back to a number, and therefore CFOs have the right to have access to the data. And we also are we are probably the best position to actually pull this off, because we also have kind of the authority to be listened to. So we should do that. Now, what I didn't cover is you kind of need the talent to do this, but you can get it if you focus on it, for sure, either within your group or within the company. Organization structure can get in the way, but you can overcome that. You may be 10 acquisitions in one, You may have so many different products that run by themselves, but even then, you can actually work through that. And I would even say it's better if the boss buys in, but it's not necessary. Our bosses are busy doing their vision thing, right? We can still operate. They kind of probably won't get in our way. They probably see the wisdom of it. So it's better if they buy in, but it's not even necessary. So you can't throw in the towel just because your boss doesn't believe in this. You show them that it's possible. And so, if you do all that, I think you can execute your business plan and bridge the gap between strategy and execution and shrink that 40 to 60% that's lost. And maybe it's not perfect, but if you can get it to, 30, 25, 10, 15, you will be a much better run company and your financial results will show. So that's it for the prepared remarks, and I guess I'm available for questions at this point. Or maybe I totally confused you and there are no questions.
Hi, Bruce. Matt Durbin from Paz Group. So you talked about speed of execution being really important. Inevitably, when you do things fast, you make mistakes, whatever sort of process you put in. So what are your thoughts on the balance between speed of execution and quality of execution?
Yeah, so, I mean, that's kind of along the theme of, your strategy better be right? So that's part of the quality aspect. So if the strategy's right, and then it's more about executing against the right strategy, and you want to be almost instantaneous at it, yeah, there is a risk that you're going so fast that you miss the boat. But more likely than not, if you become very quick operationally, you will realize you're off very quickly. So for example, if customer success is a big item and you go like, I got to get something in place and I'm going to use Net Promoter Score. That sounds like a good way to do it. Are my customers promoting me? Are they saying more good things than bad things about me? You start there, and let's say you do that and your customers aren't renewing. Well, okay, that didn't work. So then you go, well, what am I doing wrong? And so maybe you bring in other things. Then you start thinking, well, that metric was actually wrong for customer success because I'm literally not getting a result I fully expected to get. So I'd say speed of execution will allow you to, more likely you're going to, if you are wrong, the risk of being wrong is way mitigated by the fact you can course correct so fast, you just can't get into that much trouble. Now, if you lock things down for like a year, you can get into trouble. But if you're nimble enough, and if you're that fast that you worry about that, you're probably fast enough to fix things. So I'd still err on being nimble, being quick, and realizing very quickly that something's just not right, and be in a position to course correct. Yes.
Thanks, Bruce. I think you're right in terms of the how to use technology and process to make a change or make execution faster. One of the things I've noticed, though, is with execution, normally companies, either when developing strategy, either take on too many initiatives, and secondly, they don't allocate enough resources. I don't know what your experience is in that regard, and any advice that you can give to us on that.
Yeah, it's very easy to have 100 or 500 things to do, but you probably only need 5 to 8. If you broke everything that you had to do into 5 to 8 components, you probably get everything done. And even when you push things down, there are probably 5 to 8 layers when you get down to the very bottom. So yeah, pick the 5 to 8 the biggest things. There's no way it's too many, and it's probably not too few. And if you did all those right, you're probably going to be in good shape. And the challenge is, can you do 5 to 8 things perfectly? Very hard to do. That's still a lot, but no more than that. And so for almost every goal I have, and I track data, I usually have 2 to 8 pieces of information that I track. So I think the 5 to 8 absolutely would work. So yeah, just make sure they're the most important thing. Whatever moves the needle the most, whatever maps best to the strategic outcome that you really want to have happen.
Bruce, if I may, I know there's no direct specific answer to this, but I'd be interested in your comments around the balance between the financial and the non-financial metrics for measuring your outcomes, the relevance of getting that spread across, and what, in your experience, tends to be the hardest bits to get, particularly if you're trying to represent outcomes that are hard to measure.
Yeah, so there are a lot of, first, there's just the basic financial reporting kind of infrastructure and numbers, and that represents a reasonable amount of what we're all interested in. But there are all kinds of other metrics that are extremely important to the business that generally can be quantified. For example, starting to move away from the raw financial metrics are things like employee satisfaction, morale, quality of the product. Is the product mapping to the real customer needs? And I would say, so these are starting to get off. What happens in the social arena? What are people saying about you? All the tweets, things like that. So we're starting to get way, way farther off real financial numbers. But saying every one of those, I still think you can even think of a metric that best represents it. And even though it's kind of hard or soft, we'll say hard to measure or soft to quantify, there probably is a way to do that. Even on how you map your product to market needs. As hard as that sounds, if you really went to the product people and whatever product you have, you can probably find a way to help identify what is success and what do I do about it and how do I measure it, and you can kind of get it to a number, or I don't know. I never thought about, could we make it a color? But you could probably have some spectrum that's somewhat numeric that covers the soft stuff. So yeah, it gets harder as you move away, but there's so much of business that is soft. Morale, the executive team and being in sync, but you could still find a way to probably measure that and say we're on track or not on track. And while you're doing that, we realize it is the right thing to measure, or we find, no, there's a better way to do it or a better thing we should focus on. Does that help? Okay.
It's more around, strategy itself. When we set up a strategy, it's more looking at opportunities or challenges, and we set a plan. So how often do you actually look at the plan you've set in line with those challenges and the changing environment and those challenges changing as well? And changing your decision-making or execution.
Yeah, most companies, back to my first point, most companies don't articulate their strategy or goals very well to start with. And when they do, it tends to be the strategic planning session, check, done, in the folder. Pull it out a year later and measure. That generally is how it's done. And I don't know if I have a firm guideline for how to do it, but the concept of the strategy being a living document that you kind of pull out periodically, more than each month probably. You pull it out and you just rethink, am I really in the right direction? So it's the living document concept that I think matters the most, and that's very hard to do too. But the once a year at the strategic planning meeting, and then that's it. That will not be. It's better than doing nothing, but it's really not conducive to flexibility and the ability to adjust as the world changes. And again, we all know this world is just changing like crazy. We heard their airline this morning. Price of oil or gas could change dramatically overnight. It could just totally disrupt their whole operations, earthquakes, volcanoes, whatever the case may be. So there's a lot that can go on that really make you rethink your whole strategy, even if it's tactical that's causing that. But it has to be a living document.
In the top reason for lack of execution, I have the feeling there's one element which is a bit missing, which is the human resistance.
Yeah.
From at each level of the organization, you can have a lot of resistance. So how do you manage that?
That's where I kind of say you got to lead the horse to water. Say, look, this is what we want to accomplish. This is how we can determine, this is how we can measure what we want to accomplish. This is how we'll report on what I want to accomplish. This is how we should pay people for what I want to accomplish. And you go, does this, I guess you just start, does this make sense? Not many people will say, no, it doesn't make sense. Okay, good, it makes sense. Can we start doing this? Yeah. But I don't want to do the whole thing maybe or whatever. So you just kind of lay it out very logically, like here's a way that we really can accomplish our goals and make sure we execute against the strategy as perfectly as possible. And you just lay it out. And the CEO goes, I don't have time to think about that. You go, hey, you mind if I take a run at it? Mind if I talk to head of marketing, head of sales, head of product? Or whatever your institution is, what the leaders are. Mind if I talk to them about it? Because what I found is most of the management teams actually like to do this thing. They kind of like the tangibility of it. They like the fact it's concrete. And it's the ones that kind of go, no, I like to go by gut. And in fact, I would say maybe you smoke out those kind of people. Oh, I think gut's good enough, I'm very experienced, so my gut tells me what to do. But, we're in a world where the data's coming at us like crazy. And so if you can really capture the data and know how you're doing, that's 10x over a gut feel. And gut's not totally wrong. I mean, my business class professor said, your gut is really the accumulation of all your history and experience. He did say that. So it's not totally wrong. But what happens if you can compare your gut with real data that tells you exactly what's going on? I mean, I could say, I think Trump's going to win because he's the more blank candidate. I feel like he's going to win. Well, I think it's better to look at the polls, frankly. Right? That's probably more likely to be right than wrong, even though the gut has a role. So you can smoke that out too. I like doing that. I smoke out who's really in the game and who wants to be measured and who doesn't want to be measured. I want to know. I want to know who doesn't want to play ball. You guys aren't exhausted yet? You aren't tired of looking at me?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
I like the fact to display live the indicators and reflecting the strategy that you're trying to implement. I'm just wondering if sometimes it doesn't lead to short-term actions or corrections that could be detrimental to the long-term strategy. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, the short-term things that have been quite distracting and have usually been very fast-developing events that we just didn't have time to plan on. So at SuccessFactors, we kind of wanted to get into the social space. Social was like a big buzzword. We thought we had to buy a company, and all of a sudden, one company was up for sale. And everybody cost like $500 million, and we didn't have $500 million, so we went and bought this company. And we had to go sell the heck out of them to even take our money, because other people wanted to buy them too. So it's these non-planned events I find create, and we bought it, and I think it's, maybe it's a tie. We bought 6 companies on SuccessFactors. We were 5 for 6, one tie. I think that was the tie, because we weren't very thoughtful about it. So the more you're rushed and the less thoughtful you are, I think the much better chance something goes terribly wrong. I think if you're totally on top of the operations, it's much harder to really get it wrong, even though you could. You could just make a strategic wrong decision on the front end, go into a business you really weren't familiar with. But if you're really on top of the operations, the execution probably isn't going to be what's wrong unless you're rushed and aren't thoughtful. And you're more likely, I would say, so at least you take that off the table, but you still have to be thoughtful about, am I strategically doing the right thing? Am I getting to a business I really want to be in? Am I addressing a regulatory requirement the proper way? Am I dealing with a PR? Like, PR is another one. Somebody can really come at you. So I've been on boards where, like, the Wall Street Journal really had a point of view on a company that was in the big data space, and they were basically making a claim that it wasn't anonymous data. Like, we were using real people's data, and we knew exactly who they were, when that wasn't true. And I'm telling you, that really caused a spin that could have really gone horribly wrong. So again, it tends to be external shocks and surprises that I think cause most people to go sideways and do the wrong thing. And this company must have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours just dealing with one Wall Street Journal reporter. But if it's just raw, basic execution, and you're very thoughtful about it and you measure it, I think you're much better off actually just not ending up things going terribly wrong. Does that help? Okay. Are we about out of time? Okay. Well, with that then, I guess I'll wrap it up. Thanks for spending the time with me. I appreciate the opportunity. I hope just a couple things stick, and maybe you're more strategic, you get paid more, I get paid more. Okay? All right, thanks.